Hi, and welcome to a review of the soon-to-be-released Bentley Transmittal Services module. My name is Bill DiGregorio, and I'm a project-wise consultant with Bentley Systems. Before I move over into the actual demonstration, I would like to review one PowerPoint slide with you. Vocabulary. This slide should set expectations on some of the terms that we're using with transmittals. And generally speaking, they're industry terms, but I just want to make sure that it's clear on what we're representing. First is the transmittal. Very straightforward, data that's sent outside of an organization. Understand that a transmittal can also be a submittal to someone else's system. Next, we actually have the submittal process, and this is the reverse. This is data being received into an organization. It's important to note that Release 1.0 of Bentley Transmittals will only include the transmittal route. The submittal will actually come in a later release of Bentley Transmittals. Next is the letter. The transmittal letter is simply describing the contents of what's being sent. Responses. These would be comments that are returned from drawings or documents that were included with the transmittal. Note that a response and a submittal are two completely different items. A response is simply closing the loop of the transmittal. Next is the transmittal preparation, and this is simply the act of gathering together what information is being included in the transmittal. Generally speaking, we're talking about electronic information, such as a PDF or a DGN, but it also could include plots that may be sent along in tandem with any electronic transmittal. Last, we have a register. This is what was sent to whom and what action should be taken or what action is expected. Okay, let's move over to our virtual environment and take a look at Bentley Transmittal Services. Here's our virtual environment. And you can see here our virtual environment is running Select Series 4 of ProjectWise. And that's the first important note I need to make. Bentley Transmittal Services is only compatible with this release of ProjectWise. Prior releases of ProjectWise do not support Bentley Transmittal Services. In this particular environment, I have one data source, so I'll go ahead and log into that data source as my user Bill. And logging in as user Bill will set appropriate rights into ProjectWise. Once Transmittals has actually been installed and configured, the first thing we need to do is actually go to the project inside of ProjectWise and initialize Transmittals. So that's the second important note. Bentley Transmittal Services is only supported in ProjectWise projects. So if you're running a ProjectWise folder structure, you'll need to convert those to projects. And to initialize Transmittals on a project, simply go to Properties, and you'll note now that there's a transmittal tab over to the right. And if I click on that transmittal tab, all I would need to do is enable this project for transmittals. With version 1.0, I will have to set this individually on projects. In other words, I can't highlight 20 projects, right-click, and say Enable for Transmittals. I will have to go project by project. Once that's enabled, I'll click OK. You'll note down at the bottom of your project, beneath Save Searches, is now a transmittal management area. If I expand transmittal management, I'll see two areas beneath it, transmittals and drafts. And I'll start with the drafts. As the name implies, let's say I have a transmittal that's going out a week from now. But I already know the organization it's going to, the recipients that are going to need to review the package, and even the drawings that are going to be included. What I can do is go ahead and start the draft transmittal by preparing all the recipients and including all the DGN files as an example that are going to be sent with the transmittal package. This will save me time when the day comes where I actually have to issue it. One of the nice features of that is if, for example, I include a link to an actual DGN file that's a live, active file. Even though it's part of the draft, that draft link will reflect any changes that the designer may be making along the way. So again, if I'm preparing my draft, it's going out a week from now, it includes DGNs. If that DGN is an active file in ProjectWise, it will reflect any change that the designer has made. And that's with any type of document, whether you want to include a spreadsheet, a Word document, AutoCAD file, doesn't matter. If it's editable, it will reflect the changes up to the issue time. Drafts are also an excellent place to use a pre-existing draft as a template. So for example, if I'm working on a particular project, I have a vendor that I'm actively sending transmittals to throughout the cycle of the project. what I would probably do is set up a draft transmittal. And that draft transmittal might include all of the recipients for that transmittal. So if this particular transmittal is going out to a vendor, that includes a distribution list of 15 people. Every time I create a new transmittal, I certainly don't want to have to go through and add each of those users. What I would rather do is create a draft transmittal and use that as a template for any transmittal from that point forward. Transmittal area is where all the actual issued transmittals will reside. So this is basically a history of all the transmittals that have been issued for this particular project. As you can see here, we've had 4 that have gone out. Clicking on the transmittals gives us our first look into an actual dashboard that's included with the transmittal system. And we can see here statuses, which include our acknowledgement and response date, and we'll get into that in a little bit. The progress, how many recipients have received it, how many recipients have either acknowledged or responded, some dates as far as responses due and acknowledgements due, the reason it was issued, and the issue date. To create a new transmittal, very simple. I can either highlight transmittals or drafts, doesn't matter, right click and say new transmittal. This opens up the transmittal draft box. So you'll note here that whether or not I start this process from the actual transmittal area, as we've done here, or the draft area, it's opening up in what transmittals is reviewing as a draft mode. And you'll see that we have 6 tabs across the top. And really for the issuing of a transmittal, it's the first 4 that we need to focus on. So first, the General tab. This is sort of an email format of what's being transmitted. So in our subject line, we could just say what the subject matter is, demo transmittal test. And then we need to select a purpose. What's the reason for us issuing this transmittal? The first 6 options here, from review to construction, are included with the transmittal service. But you can certainly add more. So for example, I added an extra one here for bid. And if you have other options or other reasons, purposes if you will, for issuing a transmittal, you can certainly configure that. For this example, I'll go ahead and pick for approval. And I may put some annotated comment here. Please review and comment. Lastly, we're going to select a cover letter. The cover letter is going to be the basis of the PDF that gets created and issued with the transmittal. Bentley Transmittal Services delivers a template cover letter. And you can certainly use that cover letter if you want. Or you can actually take that cover letter and configure it to meet the needs of your organization. So for example, within the cover letter, which is simply an Excel spreadsheet, I could go into that cover letter and add logos, my logo of my organization. Maybe I want to include the logo of the organization it's going to. That's fine. And it also includes a whole list of variables, dozens and dozens of variables that are configurable for you. Some of those variables are transmittal variables, but others are project variables and document variables that are coming out of ProjectWise. So for example, in the actual cover letter that gets submitted, you could actually change what attributes that are being depicted in that cover letter. And again, this being tightly integrated with ProjectWise, you can actually include columns in a view and have that information in the cover letter reflect ProjectWise environment attributes. Again, that's configurable by you. Next, we have the recipients. Who's actually going to receive the transmittal? Now, we haven't really talked about the receiving of a transmittal. What's going to happen there is the recipients on the other end are actually going to a transmittal portal, which is a secure portal in a DMZ. The user is going to log into that portal and actually download the transmittal. And we'll get to that in a little while. For here, I would just simply click Add Users. And I could come into my Add Recipients, and I could highlight any user that's available to me, and I could simply say Select. And say OK. Depending on permissions, I could also have the ability to create a user from this dialog. Once I have my user or user is added, and again, if I'm setting up a draft template transmittal, this could include a recipient list of however many recipients need to actually access this transmittal. Once I have this set, you'll notice that there are two columns within the recipient list. The first one is the acknowledgement column. And you'll notice here that it's a solid check and it's grayed, and I cannot disable this feature. What acknowledgement is telling me is that when a user actually needs to review the transmittal, the first thing they have to do is acknowledge receipt. And that acknowledgement comes back in the form of audit trail that's kept inside of Bentley Transmittals. It's also going to be reflected on the dashboard of the transmittal inside of the transmittal management area, as we saw earlier. The second option is the response. I've sent a transmittal out. Is this user responsible to respond back to any of the documents that are included? I could simply uncheck this feature if the user, this particular user, is maybe only getting this information for information only. Therefore, they don't need to respond, they just wanted to see it. If you're expecting them to respond, and that response could be in a number of reasons, you would need to enable that option. Next, we have a notes area, and perhaps in this area, I want to put in, let's say, a phone number. I can put in a phone number, an extension, or what have you. And the other columns across the top here are reflected when the user is actually created in Bentley Transmittals. Once I have this information set, I'll move over to the Documents tab. As you might expect, on the Documents tab, this is where we're gathering all the documents that are going to be included in the transmittal. And again, it can be any type of document, PDF, DGN, doesn't matter. What's being transmitted, what the users are downloading from the portal, is a zip file. This dialog is actually shaping that zip file. So down on the lower left, we'll see a new folder option. That new folder option is for the zip file itself. So for example, if I'm sending 5 or 6 drawings in an issued transmittal, probably not a big deal, I can just lump them together. However, if I'm sending a transmittal that's maybe a few hundred documents, perhaps for clarity for the end user downloading that package, I might want to set up a folder structure within that zip file. And that's what this new folder button will do. In this demo, we'll just keep it simple. So to add documents, I simply click the Add button. And again, we're tightly integrated with ProjectWise, so we are looking inside of ProjectWise. So this is the next important note. Any document that you want to include in the transmittal must reside in ProjectWise. Unlike other ProjectWise features, if I hit cancel, it doesn't allow me to browse out to Windows. It's just going to cancel the dialog. And we can discuss, and professional services will certainly help you develop a technique for how you want to include documents in a transmittal. You can certainly sit here and hunt and peck through different folders if you wanted to. Probably a scenario that makes more sense is maybe leveraging a saved search. So playing that out a little further, maybe I have a workflow that has a series of states, and maybe one of the states is issued. What I can do is I can use this dialog to key on that saved search to return all documents that need to be issued for a given project. So using that example, if I click on the binoculars, this will open up the Define Search dialog box. You'll notice it's using Search Builder from inside of ProjectWise. I could, for example, come down to Save Searches and load a Save Search. And this is a standard Save Search open dialog box from ProjectWise. And I'll browse out to my project and click under Personal where I have an approved drawings Save Search. So I can highlight that and run it. And here are the documents that are returned. From here, I can just simply highlight these documents and click Open. If you're loading documents into the transmittal package that are live inside of ProjectWise, Transmittals is going to give you a warning dialog stating that you're transmitting live files from ProjectWise. So what that means is, and what they're trying to warn you about, is that the document that's going to be issued to the end user through the portal is still live in ProjectWise, meaning that someone in ProjectWise could be making changes to that document, which would then make it out of sync with the document being received by the end user through the portal. The point here is perhaps you want to send a version document, noting that it's going to be static in ProjectWise and that you're assured that the end user is going to be looking at the same information that's saved in ProjectWise. Again, it's not mandatory. This is just a dialog warning you of that, and I can simply click down here and don't show that message again. So it's not restricting, it's just a warning. Go ahead and click yes, and now my package is set, and I have my 2 drawings. From this point, I could save this as a draft, as we talked about earlier. Maybe I'm not issuing today. Or in this example, I'm going to go ahead and click issue. Once I click issue, again, I get the same warning. I'm transmitting a live document, meaning, as I said, perhaps it's going to change. We're not going to worry about that. I'm going to go ahead and click yes. And now what's happening behind the scenes is ProjectWise is going out. It's gathering the information. It's gathering the files. And in this case, it's gathering the 2 CAD files and any supporting reference file that's required for this, putting it together in the zip file. Once that's complete, it generates a cover letter in the form of a PDF, and that cover letter is generated from the template one that you've selected in the transmittal package. Once all that is set and ready to go, you'll get one option to review the cover letter and then confirm issue. And if we just take a quick peek at the cover letter, you'll see it's the cover letter based off of the Excel spreadsheet template. And as I mentioned earlier, this is configurable for you. We'll zoom in here a bit. You can change the logo at the top. Many of the attributes can be changed around, specifically the ones that reflect project information, such as the project name at the top, and certainly ones that reflect the document information that's held here. So these columns for versioning and state can be changed, configured by you, and it can even be populated with attribute information that's stored in ProjectWise. You'll also note here that at the top, these are the documents that are actually the deliverables. And then in the separate reference area, these are the reference files that are attached to these to support that. If you're satisfied with the cover letter, simply close it and then confirm issue of the transmittal. What this is doing is it's taking that package and it's placing it out into the portal for any external user to go and access it. And again, that's all based on permissions and rights for this project. Once a transmittal package has been issued, all of the recipients will receive an email that will include a link to the portal for them to go download. Currently, the portal is only accessible through Internet Explorer. At the initial portal screen, the user is going to be required to log in. And these are the credentials that you've set up inside of the transmittal module. The requirements are their email address and a password. Unlike ProjectWise, it has some requirements for the password. It must include an uppercase character, it must include a number, it must include a special character, and it has to be at least 8 characters in total length. So I'll go ahead and log in. Once I've logged into the portal, I'm only going to see the projects that this particular external user has been designated to. So again, in my data source, there are approximately 7 or 8 projects. This particular portal user only has access to one of them. If I click into the project, this will reveal all the transmittals issued to date. And if I scroll down, we'll see here our demo test. You'll note over to the right, before I can actually download content or even respond to any document, I must acknowledge receipt of this transmittal. Simply click Acknowledge Now, and what this is doing is sending information back to ProjectWise saying that I've acknowledged receipt of this transmittal. If I click back over to ProjectWise Explorer, and I'll refresh my transmittal screen, I will see here that our transmittal is already depicted in our transmittal issued area, and we can see here that our dashboard has been updated to acknowledged. And if I scroll over a bit, it will tell me that one recipient has acknowledged. Of course, if there were 5 recipients and only 1 acknowledged, it would say 1 of 5. It's also telling me that I have 14 days to respond to this transmittal. That's generally an industry standard, certainly configurable by the end user. If you wanted to change that to 7 days, very easy to do. Moving back to the portal, once I've acknowledged the transmittal, now I can download the content and certainly respond to it. Downloading the content is as simple as clicking the download button, which opens up a standard Windows Save dialog box for our zip file. I'll click Save, and in this case I'll just go ahead and place this on our desktop. You'll note the name of the demo transmittal is the same name that we gave the transmittal package. Once the zip file is downloaded, I can go out to Windows and open it up. And inside we will see all of the documents that were included. In this case we had two deliverables, housemodel.dgn and officebuilding.dgn. You'll note here that there's a references folder. That's created in the zip file automatically, and that's going to include all the reference files required to support the delivered documents. What's interesting is if I go into the references folder, it maintains the exact DMS structure of the documents that are stored inside of ProjectWise. Again, very tightly integrated with ProjectWise. From this point, it's a standard zip file, so I could very easily just take house model as an example, and I'll just bring it out to my desktop. And I can go into that DGN file, review it, make some comments, whatever is necessary. Once I've reviewed the DGN, perhaps there are some comments that I need to return. There are several ways that I can do that. I could hit the Respond button here, next to our transmittal, and that opens up our general area for the actual transmittal. I'll scroll over a bit, and here are the two documents that were included. And if I expand the housemodel.dgn, which is the one I want to respond to, you'll notice that each response has a pending reason. And again, these reasons are configurable by the end user. Out of the box transmittals will include approved and rejected. It actually includes a series of them depending on the purpose that you're issuing the transmittal. In this case, we picked approved. So with approved, you have approved, rejected, or will not respond. In this case, I'm going to reject this particular document and place a comment, see attached. And I'm going to go ahead and click the Browse box and select the DGN that I may have edited. Open it, which will attach it. Now I can attach a different document. So for example, maybe I've reviewed the DGN file, made some edits, and I want to save that DGN as a PDF. That's fine. I don't have to attach the exact same document that I'm transmitting. And in actuality, you probably don't want to do that, because if you're actually sending back the DGN, you may want to have a slight change there so you can differentiate between the two, the one in ProjectWise that's active and the one you're transmitting back. Once that's set, I can go ahead and click Send Responses. Again, if my package is including 100 drawings, I may never be in a position, or maybe I don't want to be in a position where I have to respond to all 100 at the same time. The transmittal module allows for that. You can actually respond back as needed to different documents in the transmittal package. So I can do a few today and I can get to a few tomorrow. I don't have to wait and gather them all together at one time and issue them. Once I've had it attached, I just click Send Responses. I'll get a dialog box, telling me how many documents I'm responding to of how many documents that are included in the package. Again, this one's very simple. I'm responding to one of the two documents in this package. And it's also giving me a reminder that my final responses are due within 14 days or prior to Thursday, July 26th. I can click Confirm. And my responses have been sent. What this is also doing is triggering an email going back to the issuer saying that I've responded back to one or more documents. And that email will provide them a link to that document that's actually stored inside of ProjectWise. Before we move back to ProjectWise, one last thing I want to point out is from the portal, once you've responded to a document, and in this case rejected, you can see here that it's now locked. I can no longer respond back on this drawing. One response is allowed, further responses are not permitted. The issuer does have the option of removing the lock from this particular document in the transmittal. So if I've responded to this and I realize after I've responded, perhaps I've missed an area or I've made a mistake in my response, I can contact the person that issued the transmittal and ask them to unlock this particular document. The issuer can unlock the document, which would then allow me to respond a second time. Moving back to ProjectWise, and we'll go to our transmittal area, and you can see here this is our demo test transmittal. If I enter the transmittal, and I can do that by clicking this demo transmittal test link or simply double clicking the transmittal itself, let's talk about or review the last two tabs in this dialog that we did not cover when we issued the transmittal. First is the audit trail, and again, once the transmittal has been either saved as a draft or issued, that's when the audit trail is being picked up. And you can see it starts where the draft was saved, down through where acknowledgement has been received. Here it's been changed from unacknowledged to acknowledged, right down to where it's been responded back to. And in this case, it was responded back as rejected. Note that this audit trail is completely separate from the ProjectWise audit trail. There is no link between the two. You'll also notice here on the lower left, I have the ability to recall a transmittal. So if I've actually sent a transmittal and I've sent it in error, I've sent it prematurely, I can recall it, which does not delete it from the transmittal area, but it is not accessible via the portal. And then lastly is the Responses tab. The Responses tab is the location for anything that is coming back or pending a response. So in this case, we have two documents. The second is still waiting for a response, so there's nothing here. The first one did respond back as rejected, and I can see from the dashboard that there is an attachment. And if I click on this, you'll note here down towards the bottom that there is a link to that document inside of ProjectWise. So again, tightly integrated with ProjectWise. Any document that is responded back to through the portal will go into ProjectWise. And again, that location is configurable by the end user. Out of the box, Bentley Transmittals will create a folder beneath the root of a project that will store all responded documents. As an end user, you can configure that to go wherever you want it to go. The Go to Folder option is the similar one that you get in ProjectWise. That merely takes me to the exact folder of where that response lives. So I can see here is the response of that drawing, and I can open it up and I can review the responses. One other nice feature with ProjectWise and its integration with transmittals, and the easiest way for me to demo this is go back to my saved searches, and I'm going to click on the same saved search that we used when we were adding documents for the transmittal issue. If I click on the document that has been issued and responded back to, you'll notice down on the bottom, once transmittals is configured, there's a related transmittals and responses tab. If I highlight the drawing and click on the tab, this is going to reveal all the transmittals that this document has been a part of, a history if you will, and if it's been responded to, it's actually going to provide information that was responded. So you can see here that this particular document has a response back. The response type was rejected. There is a comment here that says see attached, and if I scroll all the way over, I can see the date received and of course the attachment itself. And if I open the actual attachment through the dialog and right click it, I can go to the attachment that's stored in ProjectWise. It'll take me directly to it. And you can see here my responses are stored underneath the transmittal files folder beneath responses. And again, this is the area that is configurable by you. Okay, that concludes a very brief look at the new Bentley Transmittal Services module. There are certainly more features and options that we didn't get to today, including how to configure certain areas of this product. For more information or for a more in-depth demo, please contact your account manager. Thank you.